From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.
At the Legislature today, the House Speaker calls for a study of West Virginia's court system. It'll be a year-long study of the state Supreme Court's new appellate rules to determine whether they're providing litigants with a fair, effective, and efficient appeals process. The state has been called a judicial hellhole. And we continue our look at Senate Bill 359, the governor's education reform bill with the state's new superintendent of schools, on the Legislature today. And good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. The Senate's Select Committee on Children in Poverty is continuing to gather information about how they can best help the children of our state. Today, that committee heard that early education programs may be the best way to impact poverty rates in the long run, a position Governor Tomlin supported through his education reform bill by expanding the 4-year-old pre-K program. As Ashton Mara reports, some state organizations say investing in those types of programs now could save the state money in the future.
The Senate Select Committee on Children in Poverty is what's known as a special committee in the Senate, meeting every Wednesday alongside the various minor committees. But while its schedule may be similar to one of those minor committees, it contains some major players. Chairs from the major committees and both party leaders sit on the committee that today heard that West Virginia is not alone in this battle against childhood poverty. 21 other states have also created similar committees.
Suggested there are several different policies out there that they've done. Are there one or two that have been most effective in addressing this issue?
Investing in early childhood development, which I think there's a real consensus among the Chamber of Commerce, between people who are child care advocates, economists. That is probably the number one thing to invest in to get the best bang for the buck to help break that cycle.
The Center on Budget and Policy has teamed up with the state Healthy Kids and Families Coalition to offer aid to the Select Committee as they study ways to reduce our state's child poverty rate. Much of Bettner's presentation was focused on the idea of expanding early childhood development programs to help cut off the issues we see later in life before they start, like poor health, high numbers of high school dropouts, and a lack of participation in the workforce.
There is a strong negative correlation. You can see West Virginia down at the bottom. We have high poverty and low educational reading skills. So the states like Massachusetts that have low poverty have much better reading skills. This isn't a causation, but it does show you that there is a relationship there.
Bettner stressed that these programs are worth the investment. He says these are the programs that give the state the biggest return in the long run.
You've heard that famous sort of 7-to-1, every dollar we invest in early childhood development brings back $7. That comes from one of these studies.
$7 in our state's economy that comes from a future reduction in crime, unemployment, and state-funded health care. Bettner says historically we've been able to make these changes. The number of seniors living in poverty in West Virginia in 1969 was close to 40%. In 2011, the number was down to just over 10%. Bettner says such strides were made because of the implementation of Social Security. But the creation of that program was influenced by the large block of seniors who participate in the political process through voting. When it comes to children's issues, the process isn't quite the same.
Every day, lobbyists fill the rotunda at the Capitol pushing for legislation for their interest groups. But children living in poverty don't have the means to hire a lobbyist, which means it's often up to legislators to push their issues.
And Senate Majority Leader Senator John Unger says he's willing to take on that role and believes the other members of his committee are as well.
I think that we have the resources right here in West Virginia and also throughout the nation in order to address children in poverty. And we have it to our disposal. It's the idea of what they mentioned, the political will to do the right thing. and to focus our efforts on that versus other types of things that could distract us from it.
One such action came to the full Senate's attention in a bill introduced on the floor today. Senate Bill 391 simply moves the Division of Early Care and Education and Head Start from the Department of Health and Human Resources to the Department of Education and the Arts. It's a bill Unger says doesn't do much to change the funding or programs offered, but gives them a higher profile within state government, which means more attention. He and Senator Robert Plymel of Wayne County are sponsoring the bill.
By bringing in the education and the arts, it's kind of a neutral ground where DHHR and education can sit down and collaborate. So it's not going to make a big difference in the sense of the funding and the programming, but logistically of how it's coordinated and so forth, it could very well make a difference.
And as Bettner said, putting more emphasis on these early programs is what many studies show makes a difference later for these children. The Select Committee has scheduled their first meeting to discuss community issues on the road. Committee members will travel to Oak Hill in Fayette County on March 13th to hear firsthand the stories of the children living in poverty in that area. For the Legislature Today, I'm Ashton Mara in the Senate.
For years now, West Virginia's court system has been harshly criticized by outside entities for being unfair and ineffective. The American Tort Reform Association has gone as far as calling the state system a judicial hellhole. As Dave Misnich reports, lawmakers in the House introduced a joint resolution to determine the validity of those criticisms.
House Speaker Rick Thompson today announced House Concurrent Resolution 44, which calls for a year-long study of the state Supreme Court's new appellate rules.
Resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 44 by Mr. Speaker, Mr. Thompson, and Delegates Boggs, Ashley, Caputo, and others, requesting a study on the effectiveness and efficiency of the Supreme Court rules on the appeals process in West Virginia.
Thompson said the end result of that resolution, if adopted in both the House and Senate, would seek to determine whether those new appellant rules are fair and effective for litigants.
That resolution that we're proposing will seek for a year-long study of the new appellate rules of procedure that the Supreme Court adopted after the recommendations of the Judicial Review Commission. We want to make sure that West Virginia courts are fair and impartial.
Speaker Thompson said that even though the Supreme Court implemented a mandatory right of appeal and a written decision in every case, criticisms still remain.
We continue to hear from out-of-state companies and different organizations that West Virginia's court system is not fair and impartial. So what we want to find out is the legislature wants to find out what's the truth. I mean, I've spoken with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court believes their system, their rules, are providing a fair and impartial trial. But it seems like no matter what we do as a legislative body to improve our West Virginia system, including the creation of the new business court litigation system that was something that I was strongly for and championed a few years back, in spite of doing all that, we still get classified that we're not fair and we're not impartial.
For the announcement, Thompson was joined by delegates from both sides of the aisle, as well as West Virginia Chamber of Commerce President Steve Roberts.
And I'm very honored that the Speaker of the House and this group of fine legislators, Republicans and Democrats, have come together to say, let's take a look at a process that was initiated in West Virginia to see if it's working. Much of the anecdotal information that has been provided to the West Virginia Chamber by the defense bar is that the rules are working and that West Virginians are receiving fair appellate review. But we want to make sure that given that this rule change has been in place now for what's going on a couple of years and is a somewhat substantial change from previous years, that a fair view is given to the outcome of the appellate process that has been initiated by the West Virginia Supreme Court.
When asked about the state's court system being referred to as a judicial hellhole by the American Tort Reform Association, Roberts said he doesn't agree with that label and hopes this study proves otherwise.
That's not a characterization that I like to use. I think it's, at a minimum, somewhat awkward for the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce to refer to our state as being a hellhole in any respect. that is a label that we've been given by another group. And while we think that, that those issues deserve more attention and some additional debate, we, as the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, try very hard to avoid those kinds of labels, just as we try very hard to avoid name calling.
During the floor session, House Concurrent Resolution 44 was referred to the Committee on Rules. If the resolution is adopted in both the House and Senate, the Joint Committee on Government and Finance will be responsible for the study and subsequent legislation on the matter. For the Legislature Today, I'm Dave Mistich in the House of Delegates.
The House Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security met this morning to discuss two bills, one of which seeks to alter the definition of eligible veteran for certain state training and employment preference benefits.
Veterans Affairs Committee Chair Richard Iaquinta explains a few holdups with House Bill 2361.
Right now, we have two laws. We have the federal statute, and we also have the state law that we're looking at, and we want to try to include as many people that are coming out of the service and also the ones that are in the Guard and Reserve, and we're having problems as far as whether they can be included in the bill.
House Bill 2361 was amended and passed and referred to the Committee on Finance for second reference. House Bill 2165 was also discussed in the committee meeting. That bill seeks to provide, without charge, up to 5 certified copies of a veteran's death certificate by the Clerk of the County Commission. The committee decided to lay over consideration about that bill until they meet again next week.
In a moment, we'll meet the new State Superintendent of Schools. First, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today. Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 377, Governor Tomlin's bill to require certain retailers located out of state to collect and remit use tax as provided by West Virginia Code. Those certain retailers are related to persons and entities in the state which perform services related to the tangible personal property or services sold by the retailer. Senate Bill 378, to increase salaries of those magistrates and their staffs whose salaries were reduced as a result of the 2010 census to pre-census amounts. The bill provides that the salary increase is retroactive to January 1, 2013. Senate Bill 379, to allow advanced practice registered nurses and certified nurse midwives to practice independently. Senate Bill 380, to expand the military incentive program to include all economically disadvantaged veterans. The bill strikes the term Vietnam War and Korean conflict from the state code, so the law applies to all veterans. Senate Bill 381, to add one family court judge to serve Mineral, Hampshire, and Morgan counties. Senate Bill 386, to limit the grounds on which a personal safety order may be issued. Since the Personal Safety Act went into effect in 2012, there have been a number of petitions filed which alleged harassment that was of a very minor or even frivolous nature. This bill is designed to prevent non-serious grounds from being a basis for a personal safety order by requiring that the harassment or threats of bodily injury be a repeated behavior. This bill is a product of a work group consisting of court personnel, representatives of the Domestic Violence Coalition, and other victim rights groups who met several times over the past year for the purposes of resolving these issues. Senate Bill 388, to require the Department of Health and Human Resources to pay for properly licensed, certified, or court-approved programs for adult drug offenders participating in drug courts. And Senate Bill 389, to define alternative nicotine products and electronic cigarettes, to prohibit the sale of these products to individuals under 18 years of age, add alternative nicotine products to the list of products for which unannounced inspections may be conducted to ensure compliance with sales restrictions, and restrict the sale of these products in vending machines. On second reading in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 172, to authorize trusts to be applicants for a non-intoxicating beer distributor license and to add limited liability companies to the definition of person in the Non-Intoxicating Beer Act. James Ferris is West Virginia's 28th State Superintendent of Schools, assuming the role at the beginning of the year. As superintendent, Ferris oversees a public school system that includes 55 school districts. serving about 282,000 students in preschool through 12th grade, with an operating budget in excess of $2.5 billion. A native of Elkins, he earned his bachelor's degree in elementary education at West Virginia University and a master's in school administration from Lynchburg College in Virginia. Ferris has experience in West Virginia schools in Marion, Pocahontas, and Randolph counties and joins us tonight. Dr. Ferris, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Dave.
So are you the interim or the acting superintendent?
I am the superintendent at this
the superintendent, all right. Before we get to the reform bill, let me ask about sequestration and its effect on the State Department of Education.
The State Department of Education will probably get a 9% cut. We have already given guidance to all of our local school systems, our county school systems, and they have taken the necessary steps to minimize the effects. Of course, a lot of this, the Title I, the Title II, IDA money goes directly to counties, and a lot of those are personnel. So across the state, there's probably 120 positions that have been impacted and marked for reduction in force. Of course, we had to have those notices out prior to March 1st based on our hiring practices and our RIF and transfer laws.
Is it going to put a real hardship on educating kids?
That remains to be seen. We'll have to see how that goes. Most of the counties were doing everything they could to look for other ways other than reducing personnel.
Okay, to the education reform bill. Did you work closely with the governor on this bill? Did you meet with him?
Our department and the Board of Education did.
The teachers' unions have already said they don't like it. How do you convince them?
Well, I think that we have to realize how this governor's bill came about. The general public, business, higher education, anybody that you talk to wasn't not happy with student performance. And the governor called for the audit, asked the board to respond to it, had community forums throughout the state, and much of what's contained in the governor's bill is what folks have said that needs to be in there. So our process with that whole thing was to take a look at those areas which would most enhance improving student achievement, would most enhance student performance. The early education initiative is absolutely important. You just heard from committee members dealing with child poverty, and the governor was on top of that. We also know from research that if students aren't reading on grade level by 3rd grade, they tend to fall behind very quickly. The pre-K, all of this bill is related together. Of course, some of the unpopular things, of course, are the school calendar and the hiring practices. The school calendar part of the bill, Beth, is it does this. It ensures 180 days of instruction, and it ensures 20 days of contract work for the teachers beyond that. It eliminates the restrictive language of ISE days, OSE days, OCE days. It takes out the 43-week window. But what it does is it provides a unique opportunity for local school boards to set a calendar, which is based on their needs. And that's a good thing. If you look at, and if you look at the data over the past 10 years, and you go down what I refer to the snowbelt counties, which is Preston, Tucker, Randolph, Pocahontas, Webster, Nicholas, all the way down into Mercer County, you'll see that there is a vast difference in the number of days that kids are in school in those counties versus the rest of the part of the state. You know, that does become an equity issue, maybe not in financial terms, but it does in instructional time terms, and this is a way to avoid that. There are no rights diminished, there are no benefits diminished. The governor's bill also put language in there to ensure that all of the stakeholders in the counties, as they build their calendar, be involved, which would include parents, which include teacher organizations, which would include businesses, which would include principals. And I don't see how that's a bad thing. I see that as a good thing.
The expansion of the 4-year-old preschool program is optional. Now, we've just heard a report about the Senate committee, just you referred to, that this is crucial to for childhood poverty. So what is optional about it? Can you explain that?
Yeah, the optional doesn't apply to what the school system's responsibility will be in that. The school system's pre-K will have to be 5-day for a full week within 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
The optional part comes to that if a family, based on its own individual needs, chooses to have their children attend for half days, they can do that. The other part of that particular program is that Head Start is funded solely through federal funds as well as the collaboration. But the bill doesn't take the language away that says that they have to go 5 full days. It says that they can operate as they are under their federal regs, which basically are 4-day programs. So that will be different. But the optional, school systems don't have the option.
School systems have to offer the program.
Right.
It's up to parents if they want to take advantage of the program. That seems unusual. It seems unusual that there's not a compulsory attendance requirement for 4-year-olds.
That is unusual, but it's based on a family's determination of what their needs are.
Okay.
And again, it's an autonomy issue.
Okay. RESAs have been around for decades now. It seems as though they're taking on a new, more important role as a result of this education reform bill. What do you expect the RESAs to do?
Well, one, the bill and the board's position on RESAs is that we are adding value while driving professional development down to the local effort.
Okay.
It's easier for counties to communicate with their RESAs as to what their needs are. And this is a total shift. It's a flip all the way because the professional development in the county level, and if you look at the governor's bill language, the need is determined at the local level and drives through. For decades, Charleston has been the driver and mandated down. And that's a total shift, and that's part of the repurposing of the department. It's also part of the repurposing of the RESAs. And Friday, we're going to get all the instructional compacts and the professional development contracts because we've already started that. And I'm pleased to say that the local superintendents and the RESA directors that have communicated to me about this new process are very excited and eager about it because they're getting to make decisions about the professional development.
All right. Dr. James Ferris, State Superintendent of Schools, thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth.
And here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today. Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 2745 to give current undergraduate students relief from paying state income taxes and graduates of undergraduate programs relief from state income taxes for a period of 2 years. House Bill 2748 to require the reporting and publication of all compensation, including the source of that compensation, paid to lobbyists for all lobbying activities. House Bill 2751 to require telephone companies and cellular telephone companies to provide the names, address, and telephone numbers of its customers to the Bureau for Child Support Enforcement for purposes of establishing paternity, establishing or modifying support orders, for enforcing support orders, or for distributing support. House Bill 2755 to require certified professional midwives to report certain information to the Center for Nursing, such as the total number of clients served, the total number and county of live births or stillbirths attended as a primary caregiver, among other information. House Bill 2756 to reorganize the Department of Health and Human Resources by removing the Bureau of Medical Services from under DHHR and making the Bureau its own department, and move the Office of Healthy Lifestyle under the new department. And House Bill 2757 to protect the public by providing a private cause of action seeking euthanasia of a dog that has attacked a person and caused damages in the amount of $1,000 or greater, or has attacked a person and within the previous 24 months had engaged in a separate attack. The bill also provides a magistrate the discretion to award attorney fees and costs. The bill is titled Felicity's Law because Felicity was the 2-year-old victim of a vicious dog attack whose parents sought judicial relief under a state statute providing for the destruction of vicious dogs. The West Virginia Supreme Court, in a 2012 decision, denied the relief sought by Felicity's parents, holding that the law allows the destruction of a dog as a result of a criminal proceeding and does not authorize a private cause of action.
Up for passage in the House tomorrow, House Bill 2505, Governor Tomlin's bill to increase civil penalties for pipeline safety violations to make West Virginia law consistent with federal law. The bill also clarifies that civil penalties collected by the Public Service Commission are to be submitted to the Treasurer for deposit into the General Revenue Fund. On second reading in the House tomorrow, House Bill 2314, to allow a family court judge to order a child to be taken into custody in emergency situations which occur in the presence of the judge. And this has been the Legislature Today. Tomorrow, we'll continue our discussion about education reform at this legislative session with representatives from the American Federation of Teachers, West Virginia. President Judy Hale and incoming President Christine Campbell will be our guests. The union has given the governor's education reform bill an F for failure. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.